we did identify that there are some pervasive issues that the municipalities still have to deal with. You should have the audit report in front of you. I will just go through at a high level for the detail of what are the issues within the different sections I've highlighted as a basis for disclaimer of opinion. With employee-related costs, we had two items that we had identified as an issue there. The first one was a difference between some contracts and what was recorded in the payroll system of the municipality. That resulted in a difference in calculating how much it should have been recorded. The second issue was related to the back pay of the salary equalization. Due to the documents surrounding this, we were unable to obtain sufficient evidence to justify the initial payment, how much should have been paid, and if the correct amount was paid. And therefore, there we have a limitation in terms of this amount. With regards to payables from exchange transactions, this was as a result of bulk purchases, which I'll go into detail under expenditure, where we do not have a system to track the electricity usage. So when we get electricity from Eskom, we don't have a system to say we've received so much and this is how much we've utilized, and therefore that provides a problem in terms of, are we paying Eskom the right amount of money, or are we just relying on what they invoice us and we proceeding to pay that? And so that has resulted in the bulk purchases under expenditure, paragraph 6. We go into detail with that in terms of how that results in quite a few then impact within the audit opinion. We've also got, we also identified a problem with the system of capturing information. So, for instance, when we processing a transaction for payment, for repairs and maintenance, we are processing that incorrectly into an incorrect account. And that results in classification issues within the financial statements. So that would be paragraph 7. And then with regards to paragraph 8, it's related to the employee benefit obligation. So what usually happens is that at the year end, we do a valuation of our employee benefits in terms of how much do we owe for leave pay, medical aid, what we're going to incur. During this process, we get actuarial scientists. I say we, I'm talking from a municipal's perspective. They obtain actuarial scientists, and then this will be valued, and then a valuation will be given. However, for the actuarial scientists to value this, they need to get data from the system. As we had identified earlier, there were issues with employee costs, and when we were looking at the data that was given to the actuarial scientists and the expert, it was identified that there was a mix of data that shouldn't have been included in the calculation. And therefore that resulted in employee benefits obligation as a codification item, and also under finance cost or the interest component regarding that. With regards to irregular expenditure, we identified that a portion of the 79 million that was written off in the financial statements shouldn't have been written off because MPAC couldn't investigate and they sent it, or couldn't decide, and this was sent back to the municipality management to investigate further for a certain portion, and so that whole 79 million shouldn't have been written off as being approved by council. With investment property, we also had an issue with respect to the valuator. This was a finding that didn't arise in this financial period. It arose in terms of when we were merging and the expertise of a certain valuer we couldn't verify, and this resulted then in investment property having a qualification item. With regards to unspent conditional grants, we identified that the supporting documentation that was supporting the unspent conditional grants wasn't accurate or correct. In terms of that, yes, there was 20 million in the bank, but that was money that was for other purposes and not relating to that specific conditional grant. And therefore, we can't use that information to support another transaction because it supports its own transaction within the process. So with that, there was 22.1 million that we had in our financial statements that wasn't supported by adequate documentation. We also identified with unauthorized expenditure that there was an error there because of the unconditional grants that should have been recognized or shouldn't have been recognized, and therefore this has resulted in overspending in one of the votes, which would result in unauthorized expenditure. I would also want to highlight in terms of the VAT and the distribution losses that you'll see, so paragraph 15 and 17, that is relating to the bulk purchases, which is the ESCOM issue. So that system in terms of to verify how much electricity we receive and how much we are using is critical because it can get rid of quite a few qualifications within the audit report. And finally, there was just a, in terms of the cash flow statement, there was a calculation error within that, which was picked up, and there was still differences with regards to that. So we came to the conclusion that this was a disclaim of opinion, even though we had audited, we had received information, we had differences in terms of accounting, there was still some differences in terms of supporting documentation. The municipality hasn't yet developed an adequate record management system, so in terms of keeping documents and being able to retrieve documents and being able to prove some of the transactions, and then also there was differences in terms of how the auditors calculated and how management calculated. And due to the pervasive nature, this is when it gets a bit technical, please bear with me. So what we did was we assessed how many items it affects in the financial statements, and from that assessment we said it affects the majority of the financial statements, and therefore it landed up as a disclaimer. If we had been able to resolve the ESCOM issue and the investment and heritage asset, which was related to professional, we could have had an adverse opinion and going to a qualified. So the difference from where we are is up to what we call professional judgment and an assessment in terms of where we stand. So I thought that was critical to identify. I thought it was also very critical to identify what is the root cause of this. Oversight, in terms of leadership, we had identified there. In terms of oversight, we're looking at the review processes, holding the individuals accountable, investigating and completing that investigation. Those things are critical in terms of resolving these findings and resolving any future errors or misstatements that the municipality identifies within itself. And so I just wanted also to highlight in terms of the audit report, just for convenience, is the compliance section, because compliance with the legislation is going to become more and more important in terms of how the AG is going forward and auditing, and with the increase in our mandate. So if we can refer to paragraph 47, We report on material non-compliance. So during the audit, we bring up legislation that we indicate this is what we're going to be auditing, and then we audit based on that. There's material non-compliance related to the financial statement and annual report. In terms of the financial statements, this is due to the misstatements that we've identified. So if we can get rid of the misstatements in the apps, that non-compliance can go away. The other non-compliance that was identified in terms of the annual report was in terms of adopting the oversight report containing the council's comments in the annual report within the prescribed timelines. So it is critical that the legislated timelines that are governing council and the municipality are followed, because as an assessment, we also include that assessment on legislation. We've also identified non-compliance within expenditure management in terms of we didn't pay our suppliers within 30 days. We didn't prevent irregular expenditure as it was disclosed. We didn't take appropriate steps to prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and we didn't take appropriate steps to prevent unauthorized expenditure. We've also identified non-compliance with revenue management in that we just believe that there could be a more effective system of internal control within revenue management. This is pertaining to the conditional grants expenditure and not the service charges component side. Liability management, also pertaining to the unspent, and then of course with consequence management and procurement management, this is, as I had indicated earlier, it's important that we follow through with the investigations, hold the individuals accountable, or if it's a matter of the individual did not know, then teach them to be more proficient, efficient at doing what they're supposed to be doing. And in terms of our report, that is the audit report. So in terms of our audit, and we are open, of course, to meeting with any council committees, the mayor, the honorable speaker, and management throughout. We do avail ourselves, and our calendars then can be synced to make sure that we meet up. Thank you.